Welcome to Overreaction Monday. This is Seahawks Today by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Meghan Payton. We are on the road to 23,000 subscribers. Guys, help us out. Right now, we are currently at 22,795. And just to mention, the 49ers channel here at Chat Sports is absolutely crushing the Seahawks channel. They're at like 41,000 subscribers. So help us out here. We want to keep providing you guys with free Seahawks content all season long. And like I said, today is Overreaction Monday. This is where we take a peek at everything that you guys have had to say so far about yesterday's loss. We say whether or not it's a proper reaction or an overreaction, but really we want to know your guys' thoughts to these reactions. Yesterday was obviously not pretty. The Seahawks falling short to the Vikings 30-17, and a lot of issues all around the place, whether that's offense, defense, special teams, coaching. We're going to get into all of this, but our first overreaction of this week comes on the coaching side of things. Is it time to fire Ken Norton Jr.? And to me, this question can only be answered until we know where the power lies. So we don't know here as just fans, does Ken Norton Jr. have as much power as we might think? Pete Carroll has said before that this is his defense. So is Ken Norton just doing essentially what Pete Carroll is saying? Or is Pete Carroll kind of putting some of the control and power in Norton's hands? Therefore, it is kind of Ken Norton's fault. Either way, there needs to be change here, though. So that's where the power dynamic obviously determines whether or not this is ultimately Ken Norton Jr.'s fault. But whoever's fault it is, there needs to be change. And it might be time to move on from Ken Norton Jr. if he really is making a lot of those calls and if it really is his coaching mechanism that is creating these problems on defense. But there were a lot of problems on defense. In fact, kind of in every group, starting with the D-line. This to me was just a overall awful attempt. There was just no pressure. They got completely run through all game. We talked about that with Alexander Mattison. There was a backup running back. Dalvin Cook was out. So you need to see more pressure up here. And they spent offseason money on guys like Carlos Dunlap, so they should be performing more. And this is an area that we're going to talk about a lot. Just the way that the Seahawks put a lot of time and money into these guys on defense, and they're just not getting the performance that they need. All the way now into the linebackers depth chart. You've got guys like Bobby Wagner, who you're paying a lot of money to. Jordan Brooks is a first-round pick, and Darrell Taylor is a second-round pick, but should have been a first. They thought they were going to take him in the first round. So again, these are people that you're investing in, and they're just not performing. The linebackers struggled against screens and in zone coverage, so we need help here. Also in the secondary, we've talked a lot about the cornerback room specifically, and we're going to talk more about it. But look just at the guys like Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs. These are big names, and these are people that you expect a lot more out of, and we're not getting that. So I'm at the place right now where I'm saying, hey, I don't care whose name it is, and I don't care how much money they're getting paid. We need to attack the areas of weakness right now and figure out what's happening, because right now, whatever's working, whatever they're doing is not working. Yesterday, they allowed 453 yards. They forced 0 turnovers, and whatever they're doing with Jamal Adams and Carlos Dunlap is just not working. The Vikings converted about 75% of their third downs, and you just can't get run over like this on all sides of the Vikings offense. They just completely took over. So for me, this is not an overreaction as far as what needs to be fixed. I don't know if it's firing Ken Norton Jr. Maybe that's an overreaction if he doesn't have the power, but change needs to happen. Second overreaction, staying on the defensive side of things. We've heard this one before. Is it time to bring in Richard Sherman? I think so. I think yes. I think I've said that before on this channel, but it's time. We are not seeing what we want to see out of the two guys that we currently have right now. And Richard Sherman would be a great addition. You take a peek at what he did in 2020, just the 5 games he played with the 49ers. He had 18 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 1 interception, and a pass breakup. And this was just over 5 games. So I think bringing Richard Sherman back, bringing a leader that can kind of help bring the team together and kind of help out these guys would be huge. And Trey Flowers is not performing well. We've talked about this. He hasn't had an interception. He hasn't come close to an interception. And he's just not the guy you want on the top receivers. Now, it is funny to note, Trey Flowers actually had an interesting comment after this game yesterday. He said that when he was asked about the pass defense, he said that there's a lot of confusion going on. He said some of the guys don't know how to defend certain routes. He said that they're just not on the same page. So it makes me question, going back to the coaching thing, are they being trained properly? Do they know the routes that they're running? Do they understand how to defend certain plays? I don't know who it's falling on, but whatever it's happening is not working. And same thing with DJ Reed. He's not performing great either. Now, DJ Reed is a guy that I think he's going to settle in a bit more. I think once he gets more comfortable, we are going to see a little bit more out of him. But ultimately, I like the idea of bringing a guy like Richard Sherman back. To me, this is an immediate area that you can fix. You bring a guy like this and you're going to see improvement in the secondary. But what do you guys think? Is it time to bring back Richard Sherman? Go to the comments right now. If you think yes, type Y for yes. And if not, type N for no. We talk a lot about betting during the NFL season. And guys, if you are going to be betting at all, the place to do it is at BetUS. If you go to chatsports.com/bet and you use the promo code Seahawks125, you're going to get a 125% deposit bonus. Let me just explain to you what that means. That means if you put up $100, they're going to give you $125 of free money to bet on. That means you're going to have a total of $225. And maybe a bet you want to take is in tonight's game. The Monday night game today is the Cowboys versus the Eagles. Right now, the Cowboys are favorites at -3.5. The over-under is set at 51.5. Cowboys are playing at home. Maybe this is something you want to bet on. If so, go check out BetUS. Next, on our overreactions, we're going to flip sides here onto offense. Is Russell Wilson to blame? I think partly, but it's not the biggest problem. I still think the biggest problem comes on the defensive side of things, but Russell Wilson is partly to blame. And I know it's hard to look at such a dominant quarterback like Wilson and say that he has issues that he has to fix, but I do think so. You look at his stats from the first half versus the second half. In the first half, it looked great. He had 15 out of 19 attempt completions. He had 218 yards. He had a touchdown, no interceptions. And ultimately, the offense put up 17 points in the first half. But then you flip over to the second half, and it just looks like a completely different offense. He had 8 for 14, only 80 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. And this, to me, is just, you can't look at this and say that there needs to be no improvement from Russell. I think that ultimately it was a team loss, but you can't get shut down like this in the second half. You can't put up 0 points. They had 5 first downs in the second half. That's not enough. They barely had the ball, and when they did, they didn't do anything with it. So I do blame Russell to some degree. He's not the biggest person to blame, but there's things that need to be fixed. If it was up to you guys, though, how much of the blame would you put on Russell Wilson? Go to the comments right now. From a scale to 1 to 10, how much are you blaming Russell Wilson? I'm not going to rate it too high. I'm going to give it, I'd say, a 5, because many other areas need to be improved upon. But if the offense can't figure it out in the second half, it's going to continue to be a problem. Last overreaction for this Monday, and it's a big overreaction. They say the Seahawks playoff chances are now low. And guys, it's still very early. This is your reminder that we are only 3 weeks in to the NFL season. There is a lot more games to be played. And yes, the Seahawks are in probably the most competitive division in the NFL. So it does make you worry. But I think we have a couple more weeks before we get too concerned. And hey, we talked about yesterday during our video, the 49ers were playing. They lost yesterday. So that's a good encouraging thing. The Seahawks are going to go on to play them next week. But right now, the Rams are sitting at 3-0. The Cardinals are sitting at 3-0. San Fran's obviously now 2-1, and the Seahawks are at 1-2. And so, sure, it doesn't look great when you look at it just in this way, but ultimately realize it's only 2 games. They're only 2 games behind. I think the Seahawks have time to figure it out, fix some things, and kind of get that momentum going. I trust that the offense is going to improve. That's an area that I'm not too concerned about, but the defense does need to step up, and I think there needs to be some changes. So there's no need to freak out right now, in my opinion. I think there's a little bit more time before we get too worried. Guys, we are on the road to 23,000 subscribers. Help us out here at Chat Sports. And if you think the Seahawks are going to beat the 49ers next week, subscribe to this channel. Let's get the numbers up. I told you 49ers are at like 41,000 subscribers. Help us out over here at Chat Sports and subscribe for Seahawks Today.